Hope everyone is doing okay today. The government shutdown is still taking place. And not just taking place, there was a meeting yesterday, and that meeting essentially went nowhere with Trump storming out of the meeting, having a temper tantrum. I'm going to make an argument. There's two videos in this video, but the first one is essentially basically an argument that I want to make. Trump is going to lose the shutdown fight. Now, on issues that I've agreed with Trump on, I've said I've agreed with him. On issues I disagree with him, I said I've disagreed with him. So this is not coming from this kind of biased perspective. This is more somewhat of a chess analysis of what's taking place within the government standpoint. And between the two people, or between the two positions, one position is funding a border wall, and the other position is we're not funding your border wall. You said Mexico was going to do it. Between those two positions, Trump's position is just weaker. Now, I say that with the empirical evidence that when polls are taken on this, even though the public may say, yes, something needs to be done about immigration, even though the immigration has gone down or illegal immigration has gone down over the course of the last several decades, even if they say, okay, something needs to be done about the border, they completely disagree with this idea of shutting the government down over it, particularly for something that is a border wall. The argument I want to make here is that Trump's argument, and the reason his argument is weaker, has something to do with rationality. This is some of the brutality of rationality. Human beings, from a cosmic level, are not rational. And what I mean by that is looking at the events that the people are taking, meaning what I do on this daily basis, and how does that affect not just me as an individual, not just my society, but as a world as a whole. We don't look at it through those terms. We're not these beings peering off the edge of the globe. We are people who have needs to be met, have families and attachments that we care about, and the things that we do, for the most part, oftentimes puts the larger issues to the side while we focus on our individualistic pursuits. That is, from an individual sense, some degree rational, even within the context of that, we're often guided by, sometimes even misled by, either ideologies or certain cultural beliefs. ExxonMobil is composed of human beings. ExxonMobil, however, it is completely rational for ExxonMobil to get a report saying that climate change exists and it may end the globe, and for them to bury the science on that report and treat it kind of like the tobacco companies treated the science on the fact that cigarettes was causing cancer. Essentially, they attacked the science. They attacked the science because from the standpoint of the economic system to which they float in, they get billions of dollars. And it is rational for them within the structure that gives them billions of dollars to maintain a structure that gives them billions of dollars, even if on a larger global standpoint, it could potentially end civilization as we know it. It is completely irrational from a cosmic level. It is rational from an individualistic level. That's the kind of point I want to make sense. And you can make an argument that even not on an individualistic level, if you have grandkids and people that you may care about down the line, they may be living in the world. But let's, from a standpoint, from perspective of this argument, I just want to make this point that from a cosmic level of looking at the world and looking how the things that we do in the large context of the world, those things are usually put to the side for our own individualistic pursuits. From an individualistic standpoint, and from a country and society that tells you that those individualistic standpoints is the point of life, it makes sense from a larger context. It does not. The grandmother who stops at McDonald's to give her kid a Happy Meal because her kid loves a Happy Meal at McDonald's misses the point that McDonald's has a policy of trying to get kids hooked on that stuff, and that a long life of that will probably end up in cancer or some kind of other disease. Misses the point that the worker who's serving her that, who has a smile on her face but has a shirt that essentially takes away her agency to have an opinion, and a shirt that says, we love our jobs or something to that effect, is getting paid nearly minimum wage and is barely able to live, if not able to live at all on a wage, but serves her that with a smile and says, thank you for coming and welcome. She doesn't think about those things. She doesn't think about the fact of the gas that it takes that's being burnt in this old car that she has. None of those things are considerations as she goes about doing it. From an individualistic standpoint, this grandson, this grandchild, loves this McDonald's Happy Meal, and so that's how I'm doing it. The larger concerns don't matter. In fact, they're not even considered. That said, human beings do strive towards rationality. And, when they do brain scans, what they would find is that an opinion will come up from somewhere, guided to some degree by emotional and cultural triggers and all this other stuff. But that the brain will kick in order to try to rationalize the decision that was already made. The decision from emotional triggers were primary. The logic faculties that came in to try to explain it was secondary. We are not rational from a cosmic level, but we strive to be. Even in making our arguments and processing the stuff, it always comes out from a logical standpoint, or the person tries to make it a logical standpoint from the perspective that they're given it. It's part of the reason why when Republicans make their arguments, and even Democrats, depending on what they're arguing, it's sometimes things are put forth in ways that are not indicative of reality, but are done so in order to cover it because they need a logical argument to make it. Meaning, cravenness on its face is not necessarily rewarded, in which case you need something secondary in order to mask the fact that you're being utterly craven. So we need to stop people from going to the polls. Okay, how do we stop people from going to the polls? Hey, let's create another hurdle for some of the people to get to the polls, such as voter ID laws, or for that matter, let's just gerrymander the districts. What is the reasoning that we're going to give? Because we can't tell people we want to stop people from voting. That looks bad and that goes against what we consider or people consider shared values. So we tell them that there's ubiquitous voter fraud. Now, people don't look too closely at this, and the people who are going to benefit from this don't have a reason to look too closely at this. It's just the argument that they use to get from point A to point B. You can't be utterly and completely craven. It has to be put for a logical reason for why you're doing something, even when it's somewhat of a shallow fig leaf for the real reason why you're doing it. My point is this. Donald Trump, even though his opposition is the Democratic Party, his opposition to some degree is irrationality itself. It is utterly and entirely irrational from the standpoint of the population to see the president shut down the government on his own pet peeve, or the thing that he's running around the country jumping around saying that he wanted to do. It looks as a campaign promise. Not just that, there are a few things. So the first thing, this is individualistically Trump. This is not the entirety of the Republican Party, even though the Republican Party has aligned up with him. It is very clear and it's very understood that it's the president himself that is running around the country saying, A, he's going to lock her up. That's the first point. But the other point, he's going to build the wall, and Mexico is going to pay for that wall. If he is in this kind of back and forth with the other party on this, people understand that it's not the Republican Party that is pushing for this, that it is Trump. And in that being Trump, he himself is going to take the blame for it, even though there may be a cascading blame that goes down to Republicans for standing in alignment with them. I hope this is clear. My argument was that Trump is going to lose this also because Republicans were going to start peeling away. That at some point the pressure and the heat is going to get to them, and they're not necessarily going to stand by and take the heat for something that the president himself is instituting as his own pet policy. The fact that people recognize it as his pet policy is somewhat of a problem in and of itself. It's like running around the country saying you're going to lock Hillary up. By virtue of saying it and screaming it in every microphone that you can find, you somewhat inoculate Hillary Clinton from being locked up because it would look utterly craven if you tried to do it. It is a similar problem with this. The Democratic Party issues a rational argument. We are okay with funding the government. We've even passed bills funding the government. And in passing these bills of funding the government, we would like to parse off the border wall as something separate and distinct. Now, if you are just looking from a functional standpoint, it's like, well, yeah, you don't shut down the government for a border wall, and if you want to have the conversation about the border wall, have it separate. Now, the problem with this is Trump can't do this. Democrats can continually make this argument. We funded the border wall. We funded the government. We funded security for the border. The president just wants to fulfill a campaign pledge, and he is not willing to negotiate anything beyond that campaign pledge. This is what the president is doing. The president is shutting down the government. That argument works because that argument is true. From the standpoint of Trump is stuck with this because he's made this a political sticking point. And I guess my point is, from a rational standpoint, to say that let's separate the border wall from the other conversation of funding the government, seeing as you have over nearly 1 million people who are being adversely affected by this, that's an understatement. But Trump can't do that because what Trump knows is at the moment that he separates this from any level of pressure meaning the pressure being kind of holding the government hostage for this, that border wall doesn't get funded at all. He's stuck with having the government shut down if he wants to have any chance of funding the border wall. By the same token, the Democrats have zero incentive of funding this border wall. The one issue that he's picked as a big fight, as a big political fight, ends up in an issue where the public, for the most part, don't back him on, and where there is no Democrat that is on board for, meaning every incentive within the Democratic Party itself is to be against building this wall. And this is the one issue that he's picked to have a big political fight. This may play with his base, so about 20-30% of the population may be okay with this, but that is not indicative of the entirety of the population. And there's a widening group that, even though they may, to some degree, partially agree with him on immigration, they disagree with him on this. Trump will lose this fight, if not for him backing down, if for Republicans themselves peeling away support and passing something over his head. Mark my words on this. I don't do many prognostications, but this is one. Shutdown impasse. 8 House Republicans break with Trump on shutdown strategy. Back Democrats plan to reopen Treasury without new border wall funds. This is just the start. My contention is this will become more ubiquitous. House Democrats passed a bill that will reopen the Treasury Department and ensure that Internal Revenue Service will remain funded as tax season kicks off and millions of taxpayers begin their tax refunds. Now, to some degree, this is also politics or political strategy. I heard a conversation yesterday where people were talking about their taxes. And when they heard that the IRS was going to be shut down, they were pissed. Because in their heads, I'm not going to get my tax money? You mean he's shutting down this government and I'm not going to get my tax money because he shut down the government? So Democrats come along and say, hey, we're going to open the Treasury so people can get their tax money. 8 House Republicans voted in favor of the bill, defying the president's pleas for unity, but the measure has no path to passage, as Trump has said he opposes any legislation that does not include funding for the border wall. Trump is separating himself from his party, and he is going out alone. For the time being, his party is sticking by him to some measure. But on issues like this, like funding the Treasury, where people realize they're not going to get their tax refunds, Republicans and Democrats will be against him because, again, this wall has been a singular issue of his, not necessarily the rest of the Republican Party. Trump will lose this shutdown fight. It's only a matter of time that this breaks. Trump visited Capitol Hill in the afternoon to show up support among Senate Republicans, while House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer held an event with furloughed federal workers and lawmakers from Washington area sought to highlight the negative impacts of the shutdown with union leaders. Now, there are hundreds of thousands of workers who are not being paid, many of which don't even know if they will get paid when the government reopens. Trump has been brutal towards government workers, in one case giving himself massive tax cuts and people of his class massive tax cuts, while at the same token saying we can't afford to give a modest increase to federal workers and froze wages. This is on top of him essentially attacking their wages. It is possible that they don't fund some of those workers at all. The House passed a bill Wednesday evening that will reopen the Treasury Department to ensure the IRS will remain funded. The measure passed 240 to 188, with 8 Republicans breaking ranks to vote in favor of the bill. A handful of Republicans also joined Democrats last week and voted for measures as part of a broader package. The legislation has no current path to passage. Trump has said he will not sign legislation reopening the government unless it includes taxpayer-funded wall for the U.S.-Mexico border. Essentially the wall that he said Mexico was going to pay for. It's only a matter of time. That's my point. It is only a matter of time. And by the way, going into the campaign season with the government shut down, people are not going to be on board for this. That's my point. The political fights in and of themselves, even if they don't necessarily know all of the details of the issues, what it seems to be from an outside distances is a president who screamed that he was going to fund the wall or build a wall is now confronted with one of the houses saying, we're not paying you for it, get Mexico to pay for it, with the public understanding and aware that the president himself has taken this on himself, not the rest of the party. He's out there by himself on this. And not just out there by himself on this, it is actively hurting people in this country, including people that voted for him. This will not end well for Trump. This is going to hurt him, not help him. By the way, he's not going through a primary this year, so it's not like the red meat of the party is going to be emboldened by this from the standpoint of getting votes. He has to make himself an appeal to a broader audience, and that broader audience is not going to be on board for this. This is a big mistake, even though I understand why he's doing it. From an individualistic standpoint, it makes sense from the standpoint of his base, but his base is not indicative of the entire voting population, which he would lose on this. The secondary point on this that I wanted to make, and this is somewhat of a separate video, and I'll slice this video. Federal workers that are not being paid should not work. If you want to call it a strike, whatever you want to call it, they should not be working. If these guys are playing political games like this, these guys are still getting paid. They've shut down the government. And from a logic standpoint, as long as the federal workers go in and suffer in silence, not getting paid any wages while continuing to do a job, the impetus to resolve this issue is purely conceptual. There are negative consequences for the government being shut down, fair enough. But for the people who are not getting paid, who are going literally, like, think about the number of people in this country that work paycheck to paycheck, and the cavalier attitude in which the President of the United States has decided that his border wall that is entirely unnecessary and is being done purely for political reasons is more important than them being able to feed their families. That's where we're at. Suffering in silence is not the way to go about this. And what I mean by suffering in silence is continuing to go and do a job that you're not getting paid for because of political gamesmanship by the people who are in power, by the political class. If you are ever looking for a reason for a general strike, this will be it. The government is not funding us. We're not being paid. We're not working. If that means bringing the airport down to a halt, if that means bringing the IRS to a halt, if that means bringing the parks, bring it to a halt. If you want to create a fire under their ass to get something done, going to work in silence and taking the brutality of not getting a wage while doing a job, it's not the way to do it. Lighting a fire under their ass by closing the government down. If the government is going to be shut down, let the government be shut down, and let it be shut down in real terms, not this patient that's slowly withering away. I make this argument that part of the reason that the military is able to be used in the way that it's used in this country is because only 1 or 2% of the country is in the military. Ultimately, you've severed off part of the population from what's taking place. Meaning this group that is going out and doing these missions and killing and all this other stuff are essentially doing this stuff in silence from the context of the rest of the country. The rest of the country can stand by and play their Xbox and eat their Cheerios while these people go kill and die for political policy that is no longer defense, but is essentially offense in various countries. You've created an alienation between the people who are making the decisions versus the people who are carrying those decisions out. It's like somebody get the phone. It's like, what do you mean somebody get the phone? Why don't you get the phone? It's easy for somebody to say, you go and do this, is another thing for the individual themselves to have to pull the energy out into doing it. Alienating the decisions in the political gamesmanship from the shutdown process needs to be broken. And that alienation ends the moment that the airports shut down. The moment that the IRS shuts down, the moment that the government services that people expect to get shut down. If you're looking for a reason to strike, here you are. You're not being paid a wage, you shouldn't be going into work. If that means that aspects of the government get shut down, then aspects of the government get shut down. The idea these guys are talking about going for like a year with the government shut down should get across to you that you're a welfare, and this is not necessarily being seen to, but this is purely political gamesmanship. If it needs to hurt, let it hurt. Just saying. But if you want to shut it down, this would be the time to do it. Give me 1 second. And I don't mean to be a radical on this. At least I don't think I am. I mean, to me, this is somewhat of a logic thing. As long as you're going through your process and people can say, well, that job is still being done, it allows a certain amount of time. It allows a certain amount of leeway. It allows a certain amount of time. The pressure is not necessarily on them in the same way it's on them when people aren't allowed to get flights, when the TSA no longer have people coming into work because the TSA is not being funded, when the IRS is not processing tax returns because the IRS is not being funded. When that takes place week after week after week after week after week, you're talking about political pressure being put on the members in order to fix this. That's your political pressure, not continuously going in to suffer. I understand that people have bought this into these ideas of country unity and everything else. Does it look like country unity when these guys are going out there continuing to get paid themselves while simultaneously doing things that adversely affect the wages of the federal workers purely for political gamesmanship? Country unity has nothing to do with it. If you want to make this process change, stop working if you're not being paid. Let's see. Wes, this guy has become a laughingstock. When a privileged rich kid doesn't get what he wants, he throws temper tantrums. Wes, as always, thank you, man. I appreciate it. Yeah, this is bad. I don't know what goes on in Trump's circle, but there is no way this plays well outside of that circle. There's no way this pays well. Hello, jerk. Taxpayers should get a rebate after a shutdown. Not just taxpayers should get a rebate. These people shouldn't get paid. And there should be a political consequence for them shutting the government down in this way. TSA and ICE are Icicle Forces. TSA are pricks. Some of them are. Mixed feelings on TSA, but I feel you with the ICE one. Trump doesn't care as long as he gets paid. Donald Trump cares about his political reputation. What I mean is, this is at this point political reputation. It's like if the Mueller investigation comes back and says, "Look, there was no collusion." Yes, there might have been things where they were fucking around in the country. Even they may go further than what I would go. I suspect that this was just a troll farm, but it wasn't necessarily a troll farm in order to try to get anybody elected. But even if he comes back and says, yes, Russia was trying to, foment something in American politics, but it's not necessarily associated with Russia. Do you honestly believe that those media organizations that spent the last 2 years looking for any and everything in order to try to show some level of collusion will repudiate the fact that they went for those last 2 or 3 years screaming about collusion that didn't exist? They wouldn't do it at all. They're not going to repudiate their previous position. Donald Trump screaming that he's going to build a wall has gotten stuck in this kind of thicket where the Democrats put him to the task on that of saying, all right, fine, build this wall. From a political standpoint, he looked at it as there is no way for me to get this wall built without using something as leverage in order to get it built. He's right. He's right on that. The problem is he's wrong on the totality of the politics of it, because on the totality of politics, he loses on it. That's all. I hope I'm making that clear. It's not that he's getting paid. It's not that. It's that the payment in this is political. The payment in this is a certain degree of political capital that he is expending if he loses this fight. A, he's going to look like an asshole, because B, he shut the government down and all he got was a stupid t-shirt, meaning the border wall still didn't get funded. And if this goes to where I think it's going to go to, he will get broken down. It's like if you were watching a chess game and the guy loses a knight and then a rook, and then the pieces start falling away and the king is denuded, and then after a while they go after the king in this brutal way. He is going to start losing pieces. Like, he's going to start losing support among Republicans. Just like those 5 House Republicans pulled away, there's going to be more. And it's going to get to the point where it's also in the Senate. If it gets to the point of a veto-proof majority because people are being hurt to such a degree, that's a worse outcome. Does he bail out before it gets to that point? and comes to some kind of agreement on some kind of, piecemeal or pardon down deal, by the time it gets to that point, Democrats aren't going to negotiate on nothing, because they're going to realize they don't have to negotiate on anything, which is kind of where I think they are now. He is in a losing position. Outside of there being some kind of hand of God to save him in this, but I don't see how this is beneficial to him. He staked all of his political credibility on this one thing about building the wall. And from the standpoint of his members, or people who are supporting him, who are not adversely affected by this, yeah, they may like this. Yeah, the president is taking a stand, the president's kicking ass. And even me, to some degree, admires this idea of saying, fuck all, I'm going to go to the mat. The problem is what he's going to the mat for is utterly ridiculous. And this is somewhat of a ludicrous proposition that this is enough of a reason to shut the government down, let alone declare a national emergency. The national emergency is him. If you're looking for a reason to impeach the president, shutting the government down over this nonsense seems that will be higher than any, collusion with Russia. Somebody says I'm wrong on this. I'm running for the Senate seat in Georgia. Hopefully I can come on your show. #Lions. Lions 2020 Medicare for all, universal child care. Lions, if you're running for Senate for Georgia, of course you can come on my show. Anything I can do to help. Let's see. Somebody said they disagree. I disagree. I see Trump winning on this. Do you, Pat? Now, why do you see Trump winning on this, Pat? I'm curious. Jamal, I believed Christy Blasey Ford, so take what he says with a grain of salt. Yes, I agree. I believe Ford. Yeah. I don't see any reason to not believe Ford. Fact of the matter is, what reason do you have to not believe Ford? Your reasoning is purely political. You're thinking that just because of the way it came out, she's somehow wrong. I'm saying that you have a politically biased point of view that want to back up Trump, even in ridiculous stuff that Trump does. And, his Supreme Court pick was, you call it fruit of the tree. And on that, you wanted to back her up. Her story was perfectly plausible. The secondary people, maybe not, but not so much. John Hill, Trump is winning bigly. You're wrong, Jamal. Let's look at the polls. Let's look at the polls. The polls are the closest thing to empirical evidence that you have on this. And certainly, he's losing on this from an optics standpoint. The Democratic Party is usually as bold as Swiss cheese. Essentially wet spaghetti. You pour water on them and they fall apart. That's usually the Democrat playbook. You have to ask yourself, why all of a sudden are they standing so strong on this particular issue, when on every other issue with the government being shut down, they were folding like wet noodles? It's because they know that the politics of this is pretty straightforward and clear. Trump loses to rationality. He loses to rationality. I have a bunch of Trump supporters. Trump is beating himself right now. That's funny and nasty. Polls today won't matter years from now. You understand that we're in the election season already. We are in the election season already. And I know you're thinking that Trump can fuck around now and it not have any effect later. He's talking about shutting the government down for months or years. It's nonsense. You guys are wrong. So as long as he's treating others horribly, it's okay. Got it. 30 years later, and she can't explain how she got home or where the party was. Yeah, I'm not going to rehash this one. I as somebody who was molested as a kid, I couldn't tell you the details of the molestation. If you asked me and were interrogating me about it, 20 years prior, I couldn't give you the details of that stuff. In fact, I didn't even tell anybody about it for 20 years. So I don't, the arguments that people make are often, if I was in that position, I would behave this way. And I say those arguments are nonsense because you don't necessarily know exactly how you behave in those positions. Those things are illusions and often politically based. It's no. Yes, election season, let's push now. Yes, let's push now. Hello, 8, goodbye, 9. Well, I'm done subscribing. Have a good one. Have a good one. Trump's best play at this point is to play false liberal conservative by asking neoliberals to cut. They should make like military and using that money for the wall. Trump's best play at this point will be to play the fake liberal conservative by asking the neo-libs to make a cut they should make like the military and using the money for the wall. I don't think they're going to do that. I just don't think they're going to do that. I mean, like, what justification or what incentive would the Democratic Party have for doing that? There is none. They found one issue where they can go to the mat on for their base and for, you know, the other Democrats in the country without really having to risk anything. There is no incentive for them to give Trump a dime for that wall. And the longer this goes on, the less of incentive there will be to give him a dime for this wall. I'm just saying. Polls are fake news. Trump strong, Democrats weak. John Hill. That's comforting when reality doesn't necessarily line up with the way you want reality to be. I'm just saying. I don't get why people announce I'm unsubscribed. Just unsubscribe and don't make a fuss about it. I think they say that because they're trying to get the person to feel some kind of way about the fact that they're unsubscribing. If that's missing the point, that if you're unsubscribing for a ridiculous reason, then have a good day. Look, bump the wall, build the U.S. infrastructure, finish the overpass. 96 day of rage. I agree with you. Trump doesn't agree with you. Trump can't agree with you at this point because Trump has decided to shut the government. Like, do you know how ridiculous it looked when the Democratic Party shut the government down over DACA? And it was like this limousine shutdown. 3 days went by. They shut the government down and then reopened the government like that Monday morning. Purely in order to tell their base, see, we shut the government down for DACA. What else do you need from us? They got nothing for that. When they tried to make this explanation, I think it was Deborah Wasserman-Schultz said they got the momentum or something, or the potential for momentum. Like, it was utterly absurd and ridiculous. They looked absurd. Chuck Schumer shut the government down, and all he got was a stupid t-shirt because they didn't get any political concessions for it. This has gone, 19 days? 19th, 20th day. They are giving him no concessions. He's got no concessions. They will make no concessions. Unless there is a significant change in the perspective of the public, where for whatever reason they decide to start believing that shutting the government down is a better alternative as opposed to building that stupid wall that's not even a wall, it's a fence, then they're not going to change their posture. I'm just saying. Yeah, nobody talks about the Put America Back to Work, bridges, mainly roads. Yeah, that makes all the sense in the world. To say, look, we immigrate. The problem is this has nothing to do with reality. Immigration has gone down year after year after year. And I've shown the polls, I've shown the results on that, where the number of people who are coming into the country legally have gone down over the past decade. This is a manufactured issue. It's manufactured. Now, in it being manufactured, part of it is to galvanize a particular constituency in order to vote against things that are in their interest in other capacities. Meaning, voting for a Republican is against the economic interests of the 99% of the population. For that matter, voting against a Democrat is also, but from a relative perspective of the two things, Republicans are, you could say, more craven on this stuff. So how do you motivate a constituency to be against their own financial and fiscal interests? You need to find other things to motivate them. In some cases, you have religion. In some cases, you have immigrants. And screaming at the top of your lungs that you're going to build a wall is an amazing dog whistle to people who don't necessarily like this idea of people with darker shades coming into the country. So, just saying. How can you have a democracy without an informed public? The order of chaos. You can't, or at least you can't have an informed one. You can't have an informed one, right? I mean, I make this argument all the time. If you don't know what your government is doing, how do you control your government? You have this Frankenstein monster that's roaming the countryside. How do you keep Frankenstein in the barn when you don't know the Frankenstein has a key? Or for the most part, you don't necessarily know what he's doing in the shadows. Do you realize the majority of the military budget is black? Like, even members of Congress don't know. How do you have any level of real control and say-so over your government when many of the faculties that take place within that government are black? And that's even among the things that we, that's part of the aspects of people who are paying attention. The majority of people don't pay attention. Are the broader guards prepared to work for a year without pay? And who pays the people that would pay them? Max Webler. This is kind of my point, Max. Why are they working at all? Now, I know in their mind they have, a responsibility to be there and everything else. That responsibility failed when the responsibility to them that the government had to pay them stopped. Especially when that responsibility died on something as ridiculous as a border wall. A border wall that the country doesn't want, or at the very least don't necessarily care about, and that's not even a border wall. And the $5 billion that he's asking for wouldn't even cover. I mean, come on, it's nonsense. Clean coal, what the fuck has happened to your audience, Jamal? Well, I have a mixed audience. And we have 155 people here today, so part of the audience is going to be in between. How spineless do you have to be to work for free? What? To work for free? Oh, yeah, right, to work for free. I misheard that. It's not spinelessness, Edward. I mean, let's be fair. I mean, if you work as a TSA officer, and as a TSA officer, and I'm saying this, put yourself in the position of the person who's doing it. You work as a TSA officer. You're told as a work culture that what you're doing is for the benefit of the country, that you're protecting people every day that you go to work, that you're part of the good guys, etc., etc., etc. You're given this kind of propaganda as you do your job. And everybody likes propaganda that's assuaging to the ego. I'm virtuous. I'm a great person. I'm doing something that's protecting the public, etc., etc., etc. And the president says, we're no longer paying you because of political fuckery. Do you immediately stop working, or does that culture remain? Like, in lieu of the pay, the culture remains. And the culture, to some degree, somewhat assuaging to the fact that you're not getting paid, at the very least to your ego. Now, this hits the skids when you have real bills that need to be paid, where the wife needs to eat, where the kid needs to eat, where the house bill needs to be paid, where the car note needs to be paid. It hits the skids. I'm saying, before it even hits the skids, why are you there? And asking the honest question of, why are you there? They are fucking around and they're doing things to adversely affect the country. And not just adversely affect the country, adversely affect the millions of people or the million people who are working, who are furloughed, or who are working without pay. I'm saying that in order for the rest of the population to feel the pain that the individuals in that area are feeling, they need to stop working. They need to stop working. I'm not going to blame them for working for free. That's not necessarily where I'm coming from. I'm making the larger argument that if you really want this to end faster, and if you really want this to come to a head, if the airports stop flying, it comes to a head pretty quickly. If the IRS stop processing returns, if the TSA stop going into work, that stuff starts working, come to a head quickly. And not just that, not doing it from an individual standpoint, doing it from the standpoint of a collective action. Yeah, I'm not going to blame them for being gutless. It just, some of this stuff is a culture that's draped around them that they buy into as they do the job. And that culture perpetuates itself even after the money stops coming in. They feel like they're doing a service to the country. Just saying. Trump is pulling FEMA to keep certain government institutions will have continued funds. I see. Well, the problem is, though, whether he's doing that or not, people don't know that. People aren't going to know that. Who's going to know unless somebody is directly and completely paying attention to the fact that the government is shut down? Who's going to know that that he's paying services or paying money from FEMA in order to keep certain services open? Nobody's going to know. Nobody's going to care. What they're still going to hear is the president has shut down the government for his border wall. That's what they're going to hear. TSA doesn't deserve a check, so I'm happy about that. The TSA is a pain in the ass, man. I was coming back. I did a quick trip. It wasn't Peru. It was Panama. I did a quick trip to Panama. And people often ask me, like, why do you go to place A or place B? And I always find it to be such a weird question. The place is there. That's enough of a reason for me to go. I've never been, and I want to see how they live and I want to see what it's like. Like this unquenchable desire to see how other people live and how they go about their lives. And I understand that to some degree I'm always a fly on the wall, and there's no way to actually pierce the veil that is those particular societies without being in those societies immersed for long periods of time. And even then, you're still outside of the veil because you're not one of them. Whether it's issues of race, whether it's issues of culture, there's always a dividing line between those things. But nevertheless, to the degree that I can get close, I kind of want to get close and I want to see it for myself. So I went to Panama, and I think I was there for 3 days. It was a quick trip. It was a cheap flight. And when I come back into the country, the TSA agent is asking me questions and is acting as if I'm a drug mule because I came back into the country. Now, the TSA has like a 97% fail rate. They miss shit all the time. Part of the defense of the TSA is that the TSA are there, meaning the very fact that they're looking in it creates somewhat of a disincentive for people to try to bring contraband or something like that into the country. Drugs are usually not picked up unless somebody fucks up massively because they're not necessarily looking for drugs, they're looking for weapons. So if you try to take your pot from point A to point B, I would suggest it not be the plant matter. I would suggest it be the butter or it be the liquid. But they're not looking for that stuff, so they're not going to find that stuff. The issue, though, is that they're there in this thing of a security capacity. I guess the question becomes, are they a beneficial capacity and are they something that's necessary or needed or not? I don't know. I'm not going to make that argument. The agents I've ran into have been dicks, with the exception of a few that have been decent. So, just saying. TSA is a security theater. Shut it down. People are wasting lives in lines in airports. I agree. I think some of it is security theater, yes. Shut it down, yes. I mean, for fuck's sake. Like, the President of the United States has screamed from pillar to post that he wants to build a border wall. It's not necessarily that a border wall is needed. It's not even that it's beneficial to what he's saying is beneficial for. He made a campaign pledge, and he wants to keep that campaign pledge, creating an issue where an issue doesn't exist. That's the reality of it. That's the objective reality of it. You have people who have, let's say, a high sensitivity to people coming into the country, in which case they scream about immigration. Now, the argument about immigration to some degree is also an argument about jobs and about security. People coming into the country, we are paying a certain amount for those people to come into the country, while simultaneously people at the lower end of the economic pool may compete for certain jobs against those people, at the very least their kids. Meaning, if people were more intact in the country, this argument matters less. Donald Trump is able to make this argument with a certain degree of force because of the difficulties that people are facing in the country with increases to their cost of living, be it healthcare, be it education, while at the same token their wages have stayed flat. The argument gains momentum just by virtue of how horrible the Democratic Party is in providing a release valve to the capitalistic excesses. Let's say it that way. 95% of the wealth went to the top 1% under Obama's term. That is an amazing, amazing number. But Trump is going to beat that number. The fact that that number exists in the first place, to some degree, is why Donald Trump exists. I hope that makes sense. Let's see. Marty McFly. I love that name, Marty McFly. That's fucking awesome. Trump will get his wall, and it will be a false pretenses. The Democrats will cave. I'm surprised they haven't yet. Democrats and Republicans rub elbows in Washington so much, I bet they already have a plan to build it. Oh, man. I don't know. I partially agree with you, but I partially don't. I think this is different. I could be completely wrong on this, so fair enough, but I think this is different. Trump will get his wall, and it will be a false pretenses. Meaning, essentially, they'll build a wall using some other metrics in order to build a wall. And again, I keep making the point, it's not a wall, it's a fence. And the people disagree with the way that Trump wants to build a wall. There hasn't been terrorists and stuff being apprehended. All this stuff is just made up. So Marty McFly says Trump will get his wall. I don't know, Marty. I'm not fully in disagreement. Because I got to be honest, I don't think Trump wins in the next presidential election. And whoever is running for president, or whoever wins for the standpoint of if that person is a Democrat, meaning if they choose somebody who's a populist, and if that populist wins, building the wall is not going to be a priority. It's not going to be on the list. Meaning, however long it takes to build that wall, unless that wall is built in 2 years, Trump is not getting that wall unless he wins the next presidential election. As a second point, the Democrats will cave. I'm surprised they haven't caved yet. Usually I would agree with you. The catch is, though, this is slightly different. This is different because they have nothing to lose. Like, there's something to say about politics and political actors. Trump, during his election campaign, has carved out a space for himself where he specifically, full-throatedly, has screamed he wants to build a wall. Write it down. I am Donald Trump and I'm going to build this wall. That's a political objective. That's a stated, clear, yes or no political objective that Donald Trump set for himself. Not just setting that for himself, he gets into office, and in addition to fucking up in other areas, he does some things, right? So killing the Trans-Pacific Partnership, Gold Star, pulling out of Syria. If he indeed pulls out of Syria, we don't necessarily know if that's going to take place yet. He gets somewhat of a Gold Star on that, providing he doesn't fill it with, like Blackwater, those type of groups. So there's some things where he gets a Gold Star on, and I think he's been less hawkish than, say, a Hillary Clinton would have been by a mile. But domestic policy, oh God, he's fucking gross. I mean, the ripping babies from mamas and whatnot. The Democratic Party, in this case, has somebody who they've identified as an absolute comic book villain. And in that, the entirety of the party is almost in unison of standing solid of, we're not building that fucking wall. You said Mexico was going to do it, let Mexico do it. And in the same way that Trump has staked his political identity and his political yes or no on whether or not he's going to get the wall built, the Democratic Party has every incentive in the world to say we're not funding that goddamn wall. And get props from their party for doing it, get props from certain independents for doing it. And the public itself doesn't necessarily see this as a Democratic issue. They see this as a Trump issue. This is why I say this is no loss for them. From the standpoint of the Democratic Party, they're in complete unison. There is no deviation. Whether you're a lefty, whether you're a Democrat, whether you're somewhere in between, you're against him building that wall. There's no fracturing. And since the public doesn't necessarily see this as a Democratic issue or fault of the Democratic Party, then the Democrats can stand strong. They can be as strong as that. We're not building that wall. That's all there is to say. With the rational argument aside from it of, in addition to not building that wall, we have tried to fund the government, and we've passed this. There's a rational argument to be made that we've passed the bill from the Senate that will fund the government, and the president has just decided he doesn't want to do it. You've isolated Donald Trump on this. And in isolating Donald Trump on this, it allows you to be a little bit more solid in your political position. The reason that they've been able to stand solid on this is because they have no reason not to. If that makes sense. This is not attacking their donors. This is not, fracturing the party or anything else. The party is divided. I mean, it's in unison. Now, here's the other part. I bet they already have a plan to build it. Now, I would agree with you if this was something that was being driven by the Republican Party as opposed to just being driven by Trump. This is why I say Trump loses this. This is not the political party in unison of the Republican Party. This is a fracturing of the Republican Party with Trump setting this agenda of I'm going to build the wall. And some vulnerable Republicans who are going to look at this and say, I can't go along with you on that because I am vulnerable politically on backing you on this particular issue. I mean, just saying. It's, at least that's my political analysis. I think this is bad for him, but we'll see, Marty McFly. We could put this on a list somewhere. We can put this on a list somewhere and see. But I greatly doubt it. That's all I'm saying. And look, I don't care if Trump builds the wall. So let me be very clear on this. I don't care. I don't care at all. If this was one of those conversations where it was DACA and build the wall, where it's like in exchange for building the wall, DACA recipients are essentially grandfathered into the country or something. Build the wall. You know, I don't care. Give money for the wall. The wall is not going to make the difference in one thing or the other. And if Trump loses the next election, you can always stop building the wall. Like, the wall is not this thing that is unmovable and unchangeable. So I don't care. I don't have a strong political ideology on whether or not the wall should be built or not. Now, the strong ideology comes in of shutting the government down in order to build the wall is ridiculous. It's ridiculous. It's a ludicrous proposition. Yeah, shutting the government down to build the wall is insane. And I have yet to hear somebody in the real world, even people who, you know, weren't political, who agreed with him on this. I've yet to hear it. Everybody that I've heard up to this point have been critical or have asked questions like, what's going to happen to my income tax check? The parks being decimated, the FBI in some cases talking about they can't recruit agents because they can't get the testing. Like, this is going to have other impacts in the society the longer this goes on. Dax Jacobson, if Democrats worked this hard for single payer, we'd have 3 choices of single payer. Yes! I said the same thing. There's something I admire about this, even though I find this to be utterly ridiculous. He's willing to go to the mat for a wall, like up to the point of shutting the government down for a wall. That's amazing. The wall is not necessary. The wall is not even wanted. And this is, again, one of those things where Republicans are willing to go for the mat for these type of issues. And he's doing this for political reputation. Like, this is not... I don't believe that Trump is doing this for his donors. Like, where, you know, a bunch of people put money in his pocket, Trump goes out and does it. I think this really does boil down to a reality show host wanting his people, or the public that supports him, to look at him favorably, and at the very least for him to say during the campaign, I built that wall and I went to the mat for you to build that wall. That's what I think. That's what I think. So I agree with you, Dax. If the Democrats work this hard on Medicare for all, which is that we'd have 3 choices of single payer. The wall isn't racist, but we got to keep those Mexicans out of our country. People hate it when I say that I think Trump is racist. 2 things, though. Sometimes when the left talks about racism, they talk about it as an absolute. Like, there is... Like, that is not relative to some degree. To some degree, it is relative. It's not absolute. From a relative position, an individual looks at another individual's behavior and call that behavior racist. Building a wall, when I agree with Jay on this. This is probably the only thing I think I agree with Jay on today. Immigration is not an issue. First point. Immigration is not a real issue in this country. Immigration has gone down year after year after year after year. The president of the United States saying Mexicans are rapists and drug dealers is amazing, and saying that I think a few are nice people. Well, this kind of informs this idea of why he's building the wall, and the constituency that he's trying to gin up to support him, that will support him in building this wall. People who also believe that Mexicans are rapists and drug dealers, and this irrational fear necessitating billions of dollars to be spent in order to build a wall that's unnecessary. While at the same token, infrastructure, bridges, waterways, all of those things are crumbling. We don't even have high-speed rail. And you're talking about spending billions of dollars to build a goddamn wall. The constituency that he's trying to dredge up for an issue that's not real in order to build a wall that's not even going to be a wall, the question needs to be asked, who is this constituency? And yeah, I think a question could be asked on whether or not this wall is in and of itself racist. No, the wall in and of itself is not racist, but what it stands for, fuck yeah, I'm inclined to believe yeah. Build that damn wall. I want to see a concrete wall around the whole United States, not shutting down the government over. It's like build concrete all around the states, even the oceans. When the waterways are coming into play, we're going to need those oceans. YouTube commentators are rapists and drug dealers. Some of them are good people, though. I know, right? I know. It's amazing how you can castigate the entirety of a country as a particular thing. But people say, oh, that's not racist at all. That's not racist at all. TCAT, Trump Derangement Syndrome. This is not Trump Derangement Syndrome. Thanks for being a voice of reason in this backwards world. Don't know what I'd do without you and Adar Scarlet. Ah, thank you, darling. I feel some black people resent all the Mexicans who come in and become citizens under a law that was passed to benefit black people. Jamarl Thomas, how do you feel about that part? I don't know. I don't know enough about it. I need to look at it. I would say this. There's I've met some whites who aren't racist. Like, they aren't, like, if you engage them and talk to them, they wouldn't come across as racist by any stretch of the word, but are against immigration for the very reason that you just mentioned. Now, saying the law that I need to look that law up because I don't know the full details of it. But the argument is, you know, we were going to be fighting for the same jobs at some point, and this adversely affects my ability to make a living in the country itself. I mean, part of this has to do with, if people are coming into the country, you need to make sure that you can support the people coming into the country and make sure that the people who are already in that country are intact. Public services that will provide healthcare, education, childcare, public transport. Those things makes life cheaper for the society as a whole and allows people to go about their way in less vulnerable ways. I strongly suspect in a society that was less vulnerable, the immigration issue would not necessarily be an issue to the degree that it is. So I don't know enough about that one, Scarlett. I have to look that one up. But look, my feelings about immigration aren't fully lefty, if that makes sense. I think every country has a carrying capacity with the degree that they can accept others. It's almost like if you're in an airport or you're in an airplane that's going down and the thing pop out, you give yourself air first before you give it to your child, even though your first instinct is to give it to the child first. Meaning you as an individual needs to be somewhat stable in order to accommodate somebody else. The same thing, I think, logically holds true for immigration. The country that you're in needs to be somewhat stable economically and socially in order to accommodate other people who are coming from other countries and other nationalities that would have to be acclimatized to that particular country. But that's not an issue for the United States. Like, this country has, 320 million people in the country. This is a massive country with massive resources from the standpoint of riches. If we had a different country, the immigration issue would melt away. And I say that only from the standpoint of the amount of money that we spend on military, the amount of money that we spend in these tax cuts. Like, we are spending trillions of dollars on our backs in order to give the rich more. Now, if you have a situation where 95% of the wealth is going to the top 1% and 99% of the people are fighting over 5% of the spoils, then you can kind of see where if immigrants are coming into the country, this kind of rats in a cage thing, meaning the people in the country fighting over one block of cheese where this one guy is taking the majority of the cheese, it becomes more of a powder keg. It becomes more of an issue. But that depends on the country. And that is not necessarily an issue that we ourselves in the United States has, even though it may be an argument for other countries that are dealing with the immigration issue in Europe. Just saying. Let's see. I saw somebody else. Ship Spitfire. No, Shy Spitfire. I was reading that wrong. That's funny. I was reading that wrong. Keep it up, Jamal. Your thoughts and commentary, I appreciate it. Aw, thank you, Shy Spitfire. I appreciate it. And don't be shy. $30 anonymous donation, Mr. Thomas. Where? What are you talking about? I don't see it. Yeah, I don't see that one. Damn, JT shares some sentiment with Yvette Carnell. I don't know who Yvette Carnell is. Yeah, but many of our audience members are severely misguided. They expect to keep voting Democrat and holding their feet to the fire as has never been tried before. Yeah, I don't have this hold the feet to the fire thing, man. I don't. Do you honestly believe that the political space that's been opened up from the standpoint of the left would have opened up if Hillary Clinton won? It's failure that creates this kind of interregnum, this thing where power becomes in question, the loss of legitimacy, losing 1,100 seats, and the lengths that they had to go to in order to beat Sanders, and then to completely lose and fail to reality show hosts. It creates a loss of legitimacy. It's that loss of legitimacy that is allowed, to some degree, for the space of ideas to flourish that outright attacks the party. And again, the lengths that they had to go to attack Sanders. I don't have this belief that continuously voting Democrat is the way to go. In fact, part of the questions that I wanted to ask Rokana was this idea of vote blue no matter who, even when that blue is not necessarily living up to whatever it means to be a Democrat. I mean, what is his name? Joe Manchin votes like 60% with Donald Trump. Some of the other people who got taken out on the rail was voting like 60% with Donald Trump. Should you vote to put those people back in office when a large share of the votes that those people are taking are against what they considered and what they have openly said is essentially, Satan on earth? You vote for people who represent your interests. This idea of voting blue no matter who is, I think, nonsense. Yvette Carnell gets tons of super chats on her streams. Okay. I don't know who she is, though. If Hillary Clinton would have won, we would fight all of Obama's wars, including North Korea and Russia. So I don't think the Koreas would have came up, but Russia, yes. That scared the shit out of me, by the way. Hillary Clinton was talking about putting a missile defense shield in Syria. Putting a missile defense shield in Syria requires a certain amount of ground troops in order to make that work. And you are talking about shooting down planes. Are you also talking about shooting down Russian jets? And how do I know that there won't be a fuck up where they shoot down a Russian jet? Not to mention, I don't even think you should be in Syria in the first place. So, to me, this was a fail on multiple fronts. If Donald Trump was going to be more conciliatory towards Russia, that was a benefit and that was a bonus. The Democrats somewhat tarnished that by essentially attacking him relentlessly on this idea that they were colluding with one another, which is, they found nothing on this. Yeah. All right. I'm going to end this because this one has gone an hour, and I got to be honest, I thought this video was going to go all of 10 minutes. Thank all of you for your support, and I will see you guys back in a few minutes. I have several videos that I want to do today. Let me take the dogs out, and I'll be back in about 10-20 minutes. Thanks all. What did Fred Edwards say? We lost all the haberdashers because there is no wall. The haberdashers have left and gone to Mexico because we couldn't keep them in. That's funny. Uh-oh. Tick-a-tack. Tick-a-lack. Pointless video. Oh, he didn't like my opinion. You don't like my opinion. I like that. Oh, shit. This is live. This is live, Bernard Guillotine. I'm about to leave, but this is live. You triggered all the Trump supporters. Anti-war. I don't understand why, though. I mean, it's like, be honest. Be honest. Be honest. I mean, be honest. When Obama was pushing through policy to pass the Trans-Pacific Partnership, and he's going around telling people this is the most progressive legislation and all this other stuff. And the moment that you open the legislation and you read it, you're like, what the fuck? This is a giveaway. Any environmental policy that you were passed essentially was going to get gutted. This was going to attack labor, unions, all that stuff. But they were doing it as this kind of pivot towards China. When I looked at that and I said, well, you're going to give extra powers to corporations and businesses, multinational corporations, allowing them to sue us for policies that we may pass that will be for the benefit of the people within this country, you're essentially allowing multinational corporations to exceed our laws. I was against that. Even when I was still kind of in this quasi thing of being a Democrat, I was against that. It was honest enough to say, oh, wow, I'm massively against them doing that. The same thing needs to be applied to Donald Trump. I'm sorry, you got to be honest. The president that comes in office saying that he's not going to pass any tax cuts for himself lied. The same president who said he was going to get rid of Obamacare and everybody was going to have big, beautiful health care, he lied. He was just trying to get rid of Obamacare. Like, Not to mention giving himself massive tax cuts while at the same time freezing the wages of federal workers. I guess I'm making a point that there is an honesty that needs to be had within the conversation of Trump supporters when they're looking at the president, in the same way there was an honesty that needed to be had with lefties looking at Obama as their president. I put that both of them have these shackles on their eyes that at some point needs to fall away. Trump is shutting down the government to build an unnecessary wall. Immigration is not a real issue. I know some people are making it a real issue, but immigration, illegal immigration, has gone down year after year after year. This is a political stunt. And this is a political stunt that is hurting hundreds of thousands of human beings who are not getting a paycheck. That's the reality of events. Now, you might say that, this is a pointless video because I like Donald Trump and all this other stuff. Okay, but at least acknowledge that that's the reality of events. He is hurting nearly 1 million people in order to fulfill an unnecessary campaign pledge, and he's made this a political issue where his reputation is on the line. His reputation is hefted up against hundreds of thousands of people who are not getting paid and don't know when their next paycheck is coming from, or if they're even getting another paycheck. I'm a pointless vid. I'm like a pointless president. I mean, come on. I think President Trump could be persuaded to do single payer. Somebody else said that. Sarah Reynolds said that. She's bet me money. I'm gonna love taking money from her on this. She backs Trump on a lot of this stuff. Shocked the shit out of me. She has an odd political ideology, but we've made bets on Trump and single payer and all this other stuff. I think she is sadly mistaken on this stuff, and I am going to enjoy taking the money from her. Either when Trump loses the next election, depending on who's running against. Let's say if he's running against Sanders, he's lose. If he's running against some other regular Democrat, his chances are increased. And it was something else about single payer where I was like, there's no way. There's no way. If you give Trump money for the wall, will Trump be persuaded to do single payer? He doesn't have a political ideology. He's just trying to fulfill a campaign promise. I don't know. But you can't even get Democrats on board for single payer, so, it's kind of besides the point. Maybe if you don't push this anti-wall crap. Yes, I'm against the wall. I think the wall is nonsense. The wall is nonsense. I'm sorry. Are you censoring my comments in your... No, I'm not, Clyde. Your comments are... It's, the thing automatically shades some comments. In fact, this is my first comment I'm seeing of you the entire time. The faster we can get the American population to accept the fact that only a revolution will save us, the easier our jobs will be. Yes. Depends on what you mean by revolution, but yes. Trump does porn stars, not Medicare for all. I know, right? I know. That was a horrible decision for him, by the way. I can understand that if when you're in a political campaign thing, you think to yourself on whether or not you should, maybe I should just pay her off so she'll go away. But dude, nobody cares. Like, finding out that Trump banged a porn star doesn't make me think anything of Donald Trump other than good job banging a porn star. I don't think anything of it. Paying her off is pointless. Just to see all of those countries is a way wonderful thing, Jamal. Jody H, yes, that's true. I think you're talking about that trip. It feels weird saying it wasn't enough. And it feels, because we were gone for 3-4 months. It's longest that I've been away from home. And part of that time, I think, was even without my wife. She had to come back to the country for something else and just stayed during that time. We were supposed to be going to Krakow, Prague, Istanbul, Romania, and just kind of move our way back to California and then jump. Like with the small jumps being cheaper than any big jump. So you could take these mini jumps. Also, all of the difficulties of Europe at that point went away the moment that you're out of Europe. So paying for treatments and stuff in India, Vietnam, those countries become dramatically cheaper than what you were paying in Europe, and it almost balances out. So whatever you lost in Europe gets balanced out by what you save when you go into the other countries. I wasn't ready to come back, if I'm being honest. there's no way to continue your travels when you find out that your mom is ill. And not just find out that your mom is ill. Your mom, for the most part, has dedicated her life to ensuring that you were intact and you were okay when you were at your worst and you were ill. It is impossible to continue the trip knowing that there's something dramatically wrong. By the same token, human beings are not necessarily all built in one way. And there could be multiple levels of thought, where some are intellectual and some are emotional. And from the emotional standpoint, it is hard to get your mind out of that gear. Like, often say that the direction of your mind, where your mind is pointed, is essentially where your logic faculties go into. And at the moment that you consider something as an absolute truth, the rest of you conform to the fact that it's absolute truth. Now, some of this you trick yourself into believing is absolute truth. Some of it is just true. There are certain limits that the physical system can tolerate. For me or for anybody else, you can't breathe underwater. That's a limit. That's an absolute limit. By the same token, in the travel thing, it was kind of a similar thing. Part of me had this mindset of, nothing, regardless of what happens, you're not going back home. There's a bar on the door. You can't go back home. That's not an option. Anything that takes place and anything that needs to be solved while you're away. Now, the reason I did this is because I don't want to get into these situations of, okay, this came up, now I have to go back home. I don't care what came up, hell or high water, get back to America or die trying. That was my mindset. This wasn't part of my calculus. Like, this wasn't something that factored in. This was something that kind of impinged on the outside of it. This wasn't coming internally from me. This was coming from external. And so for me, it was still this mindset of, fuck, I want to keep going. Like 4 months in, it's, I don't know, you start to feel different. Like you're like the priorities were twofold. It was doing the show, wherever I was. It was making sure that I had internet access. I had the ability to do the show, whether it be purchasing SIM cards or whether it be from internet access itself. But also, your life became less structured. The thing that you were doing for that day was somewhat of an unknown. I always say that traveling makes me a better person. I say that because it forces you to get out of bed in the morning. It forces you to walk from point A to point B. It forces you to live your life in a way where the things that you need take priority as opposed to the things that you just want. Like my wardrobe, for example. I think I had 2 pair of pants and maybe 5 shirts. That was it. And after living off something like that for 4 months, you get accustomed to it. You'll be surprised on how little you need when you're going from point A to point B and going about your way. And when you settle down, you just get accustomed to accumulating things. I got back here and didn't know what to do with myself when I got back to my old wardrobe. It was fun, stressful, fun, and I do want to finish it. I don't like the thing of being, of stopping. So, how's your mom, Jamal, upstate Raider? She's okay. She's getting tired faster, but there's not, like, it wasn't, when she came across this, it was almost like a checkup. It wasn't something where, oh my God, this is something that's wrong and I need to, it was more so a routine checkup where they found it and they were like, oh my God, there's a mass. We need to check on this mass to see what this mass is, and this mass needs to be removed. But there's nothing overt per se. It's all kind of conceptual based on lab results. Bernie or guillotine. Trump is right. Build a wall to keep drugs out. Just has the location wrong. Build a wall around New Jersey where 90% of the U.S. narcotics are manufactured. Is that true? 90% of the is that true? 90% of the United States narcotics are manufactured in New Jersey. That's amazing. I'm surprised we're not bombing New Jersey. I'm surprised we're not attacking New Jersey at this point. Will you interview Secure Team 10? He's one of the most normal UFO weirdos out there. I would love to see him being interviewed. So, Secure Team, I know what you're talking about. I like his channel. I haven't watched his channel in a while, but I like his channel. Secure Team it's a UFO channel where he brings up videos, content, and stuff that takes place within the UFO community. I think I've even covered one or two of his videos. I think it was the Tom DeLonge one of the Tom DeLonge videos. I'll see. I'll talk to him about latest UFO stuff. So that's not a bad one. I'll check on him. I don't know his information, so if you have his information, let me know. But otherwise, I'll try to hit him up. So, yes. That's kind of dirty. Do you pay attention to the conscious community scams? Conscious community scams. I need more context. Jamal, I love your new cover for your videos. It sounds cool as fuck. Thank you. I appreciate that. Somebody else said they didn't like it. I see the Enterprise. Goodwill, great help comes to your mom. I hope you pray for you. Also, I know Secure Team. It all seems fake. Check out John X Army. Most of the UFO stuff I don't believe. There's a few experiencers. There's a few scenarios that take place, in which case I give it a little bit more credibility. My standard for credibility is kind of high, but it's kind of high because anything that I bring on the show, I need to be able to rationally defend it. But that's kind of besides the point of having a conversation with the person. So I think that's perfectly fine. Jamal, that sounds kind of dirty. Do you pay attention to the conscious community scams? I don't know what the conscious community scams are. Yeah, I don't know what the conscious community scams are. Have you heard of the conscious community? No, I don't know what that is. Secure Team 10 is a moneymaker scam. Oh, I see. I didn't know he gets money off of that. I thought he just did videos. It takes more than light in the sky to convince me of UFOs. Yeah, it should. It should. That said, though, there's this I had a friend of mine named Scott. Scott, him and I were having a conversation about ghosts, and he's like, I don't believe in that stuff. I don't believe in that stuff. Some people take this brutally conscious, this brutally rationalistic argument of that stuff doesn't exist, even though I don't know why that's considered rational. You're awash in a reality that you know very little about, and even when you get the details of the reality, the fact is that the biggest question is, why do you have this reality in the first place? Those things are somewhat hidden from us. Those aren't things that we necessarily know. So the idea that somebody is going to be hard and fast with a belief and not recognize it as a belief is always bothersome to me. There should be a certain level of doubt in pretty much anything that you're dealing with. Most things are not ones or zeros, meaning most things are not absolute truth or absolute false. There's often intermediary between those things. And from the standpoint of us, as being an objective viewer of those things, there's always doubt. I'm always skeptical of people who don't have doubt. Scott, because it seems like it's manufactured, it's a religious thing at that point. Scott, he said, I don't believe in ghosts. And then he says, but, and I love this because the but means that there's something that's going to contradict the first thing that you just said. I have this absolute belief that this doesn't exist. But he tells me at this time when he goes into a house, there's nobody in the house. He knows there's nobody in the house. It's like he was with friends that they just bought a house or something. And he says he sees a woman walk up the stairs. And he said he goes and he follows the woman. I guess it's like, Miss, what are you doing in the house? What are you doing in this house? And as he walks upstairs behind her, he goes into the room and there's nobody there. And I said, you saw ghosts, Scott? I don't believe in ghosts. Then what did you see? I don't know. It's like you understand that ghost is just a designation of a phenomena. It's not necessarily an explanation of what the phenomena is, if that makes sense. It's just a shorthand of saying you saw something that seemed corporeal, that wasn't corporeal, that went from point A to point B, that you were able to observe, but it wasn't actually there in our reality frame. It's shorthand. You just ask how it goes. So, but the same thing with UFOs. There would be somebody there was a story of a psychologist who was on a flight. There's a UFO that people are seeing on the flight. All of these people are running from one end of the airplane to the other to see it and watch it and observe it while it's in the air. The plane lands. They ask him, did you see the UFO? He says, no, I didn't look because I don't believe in UFOs. I find it to be amazing. The reality of things, I need to ensure that my reality remains intact, in which case I don't need to observe phenomena. It should take more than just a light in the sky. I agree with you. By the same token, as this information starts to get leaked, there's a reality to it. There's a reality to it. Skip rock psychologists are great to begin with. I know, Skip, but you're missing my point, Skip. You're missing my point. You missing my point. All right. I'm going to end this. I think I got everyone. Guys, thank you for all the support. I appreciate it, guys. Wes, Pop Reality, and Pop Reality answers yes. If you're running for the Senate seat in Georgia, you're more than welcome on the show. Just send me an email. Trump is winning bigly. You're wrong, Jamal. I don't think so. John Hill, polls are fake news. Polls are not fake news. You saying polls are fake news is fake news. Trump will get his wall and it will be on false pretenses. The Democrats will cave. I'm surprised they haven't yet. Democrats and Republicans rub elbows in Washington so much, I bet they've already have a plan to build it. I do agree with you that they rub elbows in Washington. I don't necessarily agree that they're in line with Trump on this. I think he's by himself. Adair Scarlett, thanks for being a voice of reason in its backwards world. Don't know what I'd do without you and Jimmy Dore. You would persist and you would live. That's what you would do. Keep it up, Jamal. Your thoughts and commentary, appreciate it. Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. Trump is right. Build a wall to keep drugs out. Just has location wrong. Build a wall around New Jersey where 90% of the narcotics are manufactured. That is an amazing stat. I didn't know that. That's amazing. Will you interview Secure Team 10? The answer is yes. Jamal, that's kind of dirty. Do you pay attention to the conscious community scams? Oh, I think you're saying that Secure Team is part of the conscious community scams. Is that what you're saying? I don't know. Jamal, I love you. Do more shows. I do shows all the time. Since I've been back, my schedule has been a little weird, only because of my treatment schedule. I put a lot of weight on. My last week in, I think it was in Berlin. You must understand, during the entire time that I did this trip, I didn't have latitude in the amount of fluid that I can put on. If I put on a lot of fluid, I can't take that fluid off. I don't have a facility where I can go to get a treatment. And when I used to do treatments at home, if I had weight on, I'd just pull it off. Well, in this situation, I don't have that luxury, which means I need to be very diligent about not putting a lot of weight on between the treatments, because those treatments are going to be 5 days apart and sometimes, and 1 or 2 times, 7 days apart. That system broke down entirely and absolutely in Berlin. Up to that point, for the 4 months, I did amazingly well. For some reason, in Berlin, it fell apart. I don't know if it fell apart just because I knew I was going home at that point, in which case it's like having to go to the bathroom when you get to the door. It's worse. I don't know if it's one of those things. But I put on a shitload of fluid in Berlin. Part of that was because I got a treatment in Berlin, and the nurse who was there was the cutest woman on the planet. God, she was gorgeous. Now, I say this only because of this. It is difficult to get annoyed and angry at a woman who's extremely attractive. You can do so with repeated injury, but in this case, the injury wasn't necessarily her fault. It just was kind of a negative outcome for me. They pulled weight, but the weight that they pulled wasn't enough. And I ended up leaving, I think, with like 5 kilos on, and I had a 9-day spread that I had to make. That's a recipe for disaster. That's a fuckfest. Also, I didn't have the luxury of saunas. You did, but there's a cost for that. Meaning, in other countries where you do a sauna, you just have your swim trunks on. In Germany, they don't do saunas with swim trunks. Meaning, if you go into a sauna, you have to be butt naked in order to go to a sauna. This creates somewhat of a disincentive to go to saunas. So, under normal circumstances, if I was in, let's say, like Czech, I would have went every day. I would have found one and went every day. If I was in Barcelona, same thing. That way, I would have been able to try to mitigate any additional fluid gains during the course of the week. But I couldn't do that there because of fucking nude saunas. Like, it was a few things that came to a head. But by the time I got back, I had to pull all of that weight off, which meant back to back to back to back treatments, which also meant that after those treatments, my resolve for doing the show essentially goes down. It's hard to do the news when your blood pressure is bottoming out. That said, that's coming to a head. That's coming to an end. So the show will get back to its regular schedule. But I even with that though, I mean, I think I did like 7 shows the other day. So You hear my thoughts. Hashtag nude. I know. Drop the trunks. Chase Zeus. What the fuck? People wear clothes in saunas? They wear swim trunks. Yes. I love the fact he's like, what? They wear clothes in saunas. Yes. In many of the other countries, and not just that. When I was in Barcelona, there was a sauna down the street from the place that we were staying, and in those countries, I walked everywhere. So it's like whatever you're putting on from standpoint of weight, you're taking it off just by the level of physical activity that you take on, which is why I say it makes me a better person. I get to the sauna. I get into it's a gym, and I paid $10 in order to go and to do my thing in the sauna. And look, for me, this is like a medical thing. I just go in and there's a lay and I just sweat, and you can lose X amount of pounds while you're doing it. I go into the sauna, I'm sitting there, and I see this guy take interest in me, and he walks all the way from one end of the pool all the way to the sauna, and he comes in and he asks me to step out, and in broken English, he asks, do you have something on under that towel? And I tell him yes, and I show it to him, and he says, okay. And then he says, hey, by the way, would you like a massage? He says, I do massages in my house. Would you like to come in for a massage? Like, no, dude. No, man. I'm not coming to your house for a massage, and that feels like a creepy come on line. But the answer is no. I appreciate you asking me, but the answer is no. But I suspect that he's asking me that because in other countries, they go butt naked. Like if you're talking about Finland or Germany or something like that, they go naked. Who just said so gay? Yeah, I think he was sitting on me. I'm not sure, but I think he was sitting on me. You had a towel. What's the problem? So Pat, from their standpoint, though, so in their mind, they say in Germany, their thing is for the saunas, you must be naked. You must be nude. And you must sit on your towel. So you drape your towel down and you sit on your towel, balls out. This is rough. Like imagine. Like you're in one of the saunas and there's like a glass door and you're just standing there, sitting there with no clothes on, with your legs open, with people who are just looking straight through the door. It's like, oh God, this is too much. That created a massive disincentive to go to the saunas in Germany. Now, I went to two. The first one I went to, I was ill prepared. The second one I went to, I was more mentally stable in order to do it. But in Barcelona, the guy was checking to make sure I had something on under it. Now, in Iceland, in order to get into, I think it's called a Blue Lagoon, you have to be naked. So there's a guy who works for that company that runs that particular sauna, that spa, and they pay people to make sure that the people are naked when they're taking their showers before they go into the larger hot spring. Other countries have different rules, man. Jamal is afraid to show his hairline, let alone his balls. Hey, mister, I showed my balls in multiple locations around the world. So despite the guy said, it's a mixed dressing room. So what? I'm game, is what it is. I'm the guy who likes to put my ass cheeks on the window of every place that I get to. So, showing ass and whatnot is not necessarily something that bothers me. Rank nudity in front of a large group of people who are also just sitting there naked is a little, unnerving. Gotta be honest. It's a little unnerving. My balls go everywhere I go. Don Joe, my balls go everywhere I go too. I agree with you. On multiple locations. I have in multiple locations. Iceland was one. Actually, it was only two. It was only Iceland. It was only Germany and Berlin. But I did it. There's this place called the Liquidrome. This. I recommend it. Shit. To whoever is in Berlin. It is the freakiest shit you'd ever see in your life. So this is what the building looks like. You get out of the tram, and within, so like as soon as you get off the tram, it's right there. As soon as you come up, it's right there. There is a room inside of it that looks like this. Now, this is a liquid pool that is salt water with the temperature of the pool essentially raised to the body temperature. So when you're in it, it almost feels like you're in a float tank. While you're in it, notice the lights. So these are lasers that they have flying all over the place. So while you're floating in the pool, like this person, come on. So while you're floating in the pool like this person, there are laser lights that are going all over the place. Like they're like covering the place in lights. And there's music being beamed into the pool. All right, so they're showing a band. They didn't have a band when I was there. I hope you can see this. But the same way that people are in the pool and everything else, and there's lasers flying all around, and there's music being pumped through the water. In this case, they have a band. They didn't have a band when I was there, but there was music pumped through the water. And this is what's taking place while you're in the pool area. This is like, it's fucking bizarre. And you're there, you're kind of like floating, and you're like, all right, this is bizarre, this is strange. Now, in the swimming pool, swim trunks are not optional. You have to have those on. Women and men have to be properly dressed, meaning in swimsuits, when they're in the pool. That didn't stop a couple from fucking in the pool, and you're like watching me like, fair enough. Good job. I'm not gonna bitch or complain. It's what it is. He's getting his own, she's getting her own. I'm a lefty. I don't care. Now, from that point on, there's also, in the same building, various rooms. So there's like the Finnish spa, there's a herbal spa, these. Now, this couple is wearing a towel. Usually there is no towel. In fact, they probably have a towel just for this picture by itself. Those towels are not allowed in the way that they're wearing those towels when you're in the room. It is balls out. It is breast and vagina out. Your vagina needs to be exposed to the air just like my balls need to be exposed to the air. And that's essentially the place. It's a bizarre place, man. Especially coming from America. We have certain pet peeves. You have to complain on, yep. What? No Thai spa? No, they did have Thai spas. I mean, keep in mind, they had Thai spas, erotic spas. They have all sorts of stuff in these places. Warsaw. So there's a place called Shambhala. Now, I didn't know what this was. And I walk by it every day when I'm going back and forth in order to get to the tram and the train station in Warsaw. It's just in a direction for my thing. So as I'm walking back, it would be Shambhala. And I'm thinking, like, is this some kind of... I thought it was either herbal, or I thought it was either kind of like a new age thing, like a fortune teller or something like that. Like where you have psychics and certain spiritual practices thing. And I get back to my hotel, and I didn't go in. My impetus was just go in and just see what it is. And I didn't do that. For some reason, there was a certain degree of fear in just going into this random place where you don't necessarily know what the place is. And I don't want to get trapped into something where I feel like emotionally pushed into doing something or paying for something I don't know what it is. I get back to my hotel and I look it up. It is an erotic massage parlor. I'm like, what? What the fuck is an erotic massage parlor? It is. They have some heady stuff, man. That's all I'm saying. They have some heady stuff. They have some truly heady stuff. Trudy, what's happening, Trudy? What's happening? Yeah, they have some truly heady stuff in there. Adding it to my list, visit Berlin Spa. Yes, that should be on your list. That spa in Berlin is an experience in and of itself. The Blue Lagoon in Iceland is another one. I think it's called Blue Lagoon. Yeah, Blue Lagoon. Now, Iceland is usually really expensive, but the Blue Lagoon is not. If you get even a layover in Iceland, go to the Blue Lagoon. It is fucking amazing. Now, it is brutally cold outside, but the water temperature is being heated up by thermal spas. It's a massive thermal spa. It is a massive complex that also has like the massages, the dining rooms, and all this other stuff. Those things are going to be brutally expensive, in which case we weren't able to get it. But the basics of the lagoon itself, where you can buy a ticket to be there for like an hour, is not overly expensive. And you get like the sulfur mask and all this other stuff. My wife, I couldn't tell if my wife saw this because of the perfect people they had in the ad, or whether this was something that she just wanted to do, but it looks like this. The people, this looks like the complex. Meaning, for the most part, you can get pretty much anywhere here, either underwater or over land. Usually it's not over land because it's so cold that if you're in your skivvies and it's brutally cold out, you're not necessarily going to do it. But everywhere else, the entry thing, when my wife saw this, sometimes my wife sees things and I can't tell if she's being enamored by the people who they have, like the beautiful people who they have in the ad, or if it's something that she likes herself. There's this thing called, it's not a harem, it's a harem something. It's a spa, it's like a Turkish spa. When we were in, was it Barcelona? It's not a harem, it's called something else, but it starts with an H. But in Madrid, there was an ad for it. My wife is like, "Oh, I want to do that." And you look at the ad, and it's this, I couldn't tell if he was Spanish or Arab. Essentially, perfect physique, perfect look. He has this kind of strong look on his face, like an actor's face. And he's essentially allowing these people to come in, and he's washing them. It's like he's taking this balloon and he's like soaping them up, and they're like on this big slab and stone, and they're like being doused with water and everything. And I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? You want to do this? She says, yes, I want to do this. I have sensitivity issues with my body, like I've said on numerous occasions, and even taking my shirt off was this kind of freeing experience because it wasn't something I typically did. But I went with her for this. This was also an awesome experience, even though, again, it's somewhat difficult for the senses. If you're okay with your body, then it's not an issue. If you have sensitivity issues, then you're going to have sensitivity issues. And those things you have to get past. They put you on a stone slab. You're effectively nude. For men, they have this kind of coin purse where you put your balls in a little, it's like a little thing of fabric. And you're on a stone slab. And for me, it was like this woman comes in, and you're soaked up, and then they take water and they douse the water on you, and then the person like scrubs you down. Like, it's a weird thing to be scrubbed down by another human being, like your farm animal. And at which point, they say, okay, you can go to get your massage or whatever else. Some of this stuff is bizarre. We did the same thing in, I think it was Egypt. Now in Egypt it's a little weirder because for religious reasons they tend to not do that, but once you're in Sharm el-Sheikh, the religious stuff kind of goes out the window. To some degree it goes out the window. But some of these things are good, man. Some of these things are good. Jamarl was getting freaky overseas. Weirded out overseas more than anything else. Fucking weird, a grown up being watched like a baby. Yes, that's my point. It's weird. It's really weird. It's like going to a Turkish spa. Adrian Bourdain, one of my favorite videos of his was when he went to Turkey. And this video is a must watch because it is fucking amazing. It's awesome to watch. There is an actor's face that people put on when they're engaging that gets stripped away when something real is taking place. And the person can't compensate. And that the energy that's being emptied into them needs to be expended in some particular capacity. What I mean by this is, Anthony Bourdain goes to a Turkish spa. And in this Turkish spa, his guide is with him. His guide doesn't get a massage. He allows Bourdain to get a massage. And the masseuse who's giving this Turkish massage is a man who's in his skivvies. I think the guy's like in a towel. And he is bending Bourdain in these weird contortions, like bending Bourdain. And Bourdain gets to the point where he's like screaming in pain from the guy contorting his body in these weird ways. While his guy just kind of sits there drinking tea and is on looks. Bourdain, in this commentary, kind of made the point, like, I should have known that when he wasn't getting it, that this was going to be somewhat trouble. Yeah. It's fascinating. For those of you who just got here, Jamal is discussing how Trump border wall is like a Turkish spy. C-Card, I saw that episode. Yeah, that's a fucking amazing episode. He got broken. I heard about Turkey, you have to guard your buttocks. What? Have to guard your buttocks. Edward Klein, gay. It's not gay. You're just insecure about your manhood, buddy. You know, I do say something about the whole thing of getting massage from a guy. It's awkward. It's a little weird. So I get with you on this thing of feeling uptight about it. By the same token, an argument can be made, well, the guy is not there for any kind of sexual satisfaction, and if this was a woman, do you believe that she would be there for some level of sexual satisfaction? And what are you getting out of this? It's supposed to be a massage, not an orgy. So I feel you. According to Armenians, so it is said. Oh, I see. Watch cornhole. I don't know. You have to watch your buttocks. It's just so bizarre. Just so weird. No dick shaming over yonder. Is that what it is, Mrs. Tree? No dick shaming? I did see. I saw the wildest thing, and I guess, like, God, I wish I could be that guy. When I grow up, I want to be that guy. In the spa, in Berlin, you must understand, in the Liquidrome, there's a bar inside of the area near the pool and everything else. So it's like all of the stuff is inside. I went to get a shot of vodka because I needed something to help mind the gap between what the fuck was taking place versus my mind kind of fucking with me. And there's a guy who's butt naked, not a shred of clothing on him. He has a towel over his shoulder, and he's just standing there with his legs open, like looking about with no shame. Like, zero shame. It was almost as if he was zero aware that he had no clothes on his body, and it was as normal to him as having clothes on. He was just going about looking his way, parading his little penis all about. And I'm like, oh my God, I want to be that guy. To be able to just stand there with whatever physical, avatar that you have in this reality space and be okay with it. I found it to be amazing, man. Found it to be amazing. If it was a woman, I would get sexual satisfaction, whether she wanted me to or not. I felt weirder with the guy thing. It felt more natural being a female, even though it wasn't to try to get any kind of sexual satisfaction out of it. I think it has less to do with trying to get sexual satisfaction and more about weirded out with the sexuality issues that take place in the States. That's all. But that's, you can get over that. All right. I'm going to end this. Anthony, I'm just straight. But it's not about being gay. At least I don't think so. I think it takes there's a cultural upbringing in the States. That's true. And with that cultural upbringing in the States, there's this pretend thing as if there's a clear deviating line between sexuality. This person's gay, this person's straight, this person's bi, all that good stuff. And there are certain cultural ideas around what it means to be a man. But those are cultural ideas of what it means to be a man. What it means to be a man is somewhat of a flexible definition. The idea that you're being given a massage and that somehow makes you gay is like, come on. Jamal is talking about his physical avatar. Yes, our reality space. All right, I'm going to end this. I had a lot of people here today. I think it almost got up to 200 people. So me fucking around talking about it after the fact, we've dropped. I'm straight too, bro. It really irks you, though. Yeah, I know, right? I disagree with the opinion, but I understand where he's coming from. I wouldn't let a homo touch me. He's not gay. All right, so let's have this conversation. Fair enough. You guys have ended up with this conversation. Let's have it. The idea of gay or straight is not an absolute. Let's be clear. The idea of what it means to be a man is just an idea of what it means to be a man. There is no such thing in the strong context of a term man or woman. Those things are conceptual issues that you yourself create. That is not something that is a homogenous viewpoint across the board. Unless you want to say just being a man is having a testicle and having a penis. But we know that being a man goes beyond that, at least from the standpoint of the definitions in our country, the way we see the stuff in our heads. The very fact that we have that conversation of, I wouldn't let a quote-unquote homo touch me if you were getting a massage, again, the question asserts itself. What are you getting out of it if it was a woman, or for that matter, if it was a guy who was straight? Like, it's a person who's doing a job. I mean, the woman could say the same thing. I don't want to put my hands on a guy because the guy may be getting some kind of sexual satisfaction out of a massage. I just want to do my job. Like that argument works both ways. I guess I attack this idea that there is a clear delineation of what it means to be a man, and that clear delineation is purely just the physical standpoint of what it means to be a man. What it means to be a man is purely an identity issue, and that identity issue is not a fixed item. Also, there is something. If I'm getting a massage, I don't think I care. Like, the sexuality of the individual that's involved in me getting a massage matters less to me. Yeah, it doesn't matter. What does it matter? I mean, I'm not going there for some kind of sexual satisfaction. I'm going there for a massage. I thought Jamal was happily married to a nice lady. I am happily married to a nice lady. What does that have to do with the massage? When I was 23, there was a woman that always tapped my butt when I walked past. I didn't mind it, but it was a bit off. See, I wouldn't mind it either, but that's a deviation between the sexes. It just is. It's a you could say a catch-22 or a double standard. It's a double standard. Men, I think, take less offense to that stuff. And I suspect because we take less offense to it, we think that the same behavior is okay around the other way. There was a woman when I was in school that would always inevitably grab my ass. Now, this happened twice, and it was the same person both times, and in both situations, she's like, my bad, it was a mistake. It's like, are you shitting me? You're the only person that's grabbed my ass twice in the entire time I've been to school, and it's been you both times, but both times it was just a mistake. Okay. I didn't particularly care, but like you said, it's a bit off. But the reverse is not true. Like, I don't think that woman who grabbed your ass, there was no situation where you thought she's going to attack me and rip my pants off and essentially have her way with me. And even if she did, if you did think that, as a guy, you may think that was pretty hot. It's different, man, between the sexes. Then fuck it. It's not gay or lesbian or LGBT, cougar or 18-year-old. If I want, then let's go. What? I don't know what that means. I don't know what that means. Yeah, JT, shouldn't you be live on Gordon Mack's channel tonight? It's almost 19:30 in London. I think 21:30. No, I haven't talked to Gordon about being live. He said it was going to be on like next week or something. Yeah, not that I'm aware of. I mean, him and I were talking about being on a show together, but there wasn't a hard set time. I think it means you're getting a free massage, JT. From who? From who? I used to go to a chiropractor because I used to have back pain. And the thought was that the chiropractic care or massage would help with the back pain. Ish. I mean, I think it helps. I don't go as regularly as I used to because once the back pain diminished, at that point, there was no point in going. But if it means, if somebody touches me and I pay for it, they want to go further than if they want. Oh, I see what you mean. That's funny. Like if a person is doing a massage and they're like, let's keep this thing popping. I don't know, man. There was a woman in Egypt that gave a massage. And again, like the massage thing in Egypt is a little dicey just because of the religious stuff. But she was enamored by me, and it was freaking my wife out. Like, so she couldn't speak English, but she would look at my tattoos and she would be like, oh, she would keep doing this, like this heart symbol, and drop dead gorgeous, like gorgeous. And I'm doing the massage, and I'm already self-conscious because, you know, you're naked in the massage, and my wife is getting pissy because my wife is like, you know, she's fawning over you and she's giving you a massage and she's touching you inappropriately. What if that was me getting a massage by a guy? How would you feel about that if the guy was telling me that, you know, he's in love with me and all this other stuff? But going further, I don't know. I guess it depends on the situation. Gordon DeMac did mention a specific date for having Jamal on it. I don't think. What? No way. The last time I talked to Gordon, he said Thursday was going to be too soon, so let's plan for another day. All right, let me hit him up. Let's see what's going on. If he wants to be on tonight, I'll be on tonight. I didn't know he was still. The last time we talked, he said it was going to be a no-go until next week, but we'll see. We'll make it work. All right, guys. I'll end it here. If you guys enjoy the content, please feel free to share, like, subscribe. You can always support through Patreon. Feminazi stuff is hilarious to me. I think that's what Rush Limbaugh is. Feminazis. All right, guys. You have a good one. I'll see you shortly. Bye-bye.